What are we talking about? What are we talking about? What are we talking about?
All sports.
I had been betting on NBA games with a close friend of mine. He was passing along the information to somebody that was associated in the mob.
They picked you up.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened then?
I think we have here a rogue, isolated criminal.
Timothy Francis Donaghy, born January 7th, 1967. The most important thing in sports, often assumed to be well within the guidelines, is fair play and a level playing field. But sports has never been fair, and a level playing field has never existed. Because what's level about Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, and Vince Carter being 6'6", able to jump out the gym, and born with elite athleticism and fast switch muscles, as they say, compared to Muggsy Bogues, John Stockton, and Trae Young barely being able to touch the net? Or fair about the weather conditions and the environment in certain parts of the world, creating better sprinters and distance runners? Fact is, there's nothing fair about talent. You either have it or you don't. Even when you do, some just have a little more. But those are the natural imbalances of sports that we've all come to terms with, and because we understand there's no changing their existence, we move forward. Much different when you have unnatural efforts in which some use to tip the scale in their favor. When that happens, what's the point of even playing when you've trained so hard to win against someone with less training hours but an extra boost? Or, in this case, assistance. Tim Donaghy is a former NBA referee that was alleged to have bet on NBA games, including ones he officiated, and even made calls to cover point spreads of the games to ensure who was ever paying him wins, with he receiving a small cut himself. With gambling issues lining his background, Donaghy wagered thousands of dollars on basketball games in the early 2000s, beginning in 2005, until he was caught and forced to resign in 2007. What followed was public and nationwide embarrassment, his wife leaving him, prison time, and a strain on he and his family name forever. But most importantly, the scandal tainted the NBA and gave a black eye to a sport that's already questioned in how it's officiated, and year after year, basketball fans can't understand why the simplest calls can't be correctly made in real time. He broke trust in the NBA, and only until recently, the league has been able to forget about the officiating misuse of Tim Donaghy. This scandal happening even once in sports is enough to question its fairness forever, with the natural assumption he didn't act alone, and is it still going on today? Here are 3 growth stunts of the Tim Donaghy scandal that broke trust in the NBA, and an NBA response that may never erase what happened. Let's talk about it. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth. Let's get it, man. Tim Donaghy was a referee in the NBA from '94 to 2007 that you could say was bred to become an NBA official. He grew up in the suburbs of Pennsylvania and went to high school with a few schoolmates that would also become renowned NBA referees. His father was also a referee, although he only made it to officiating high-level college games. Supposedly, Tim Donaghy was an all-everything baseball and basketball player locally until a Villanova baseball coach later stated that those supposed honors Tim achieved were all lies, told for a better resume. In the late 80s, early 90s, he officiated high school and CBA games, rising the ranks until in 1994, he finally got the opportunity he wanted in the NBA. He'd get married the very next year, but after 12 years of marriage, his former wife left him because of the NBA scandal. Stunt number 1, an NBA official betting on games. The first way in which Tim Donaghy broke trust in the NBA is the fact you had a referee still active that was making bets on the outcome of games, even ones he officiated himself. Time and time again, you see a call made in a game and a player or coach react to it in complete disbelief or uncontrolled anger. We've been conditioned to accept that as normal occurrences unless done by a player or coach we'd last expected from. When that scandal broke in 2007 about Tim Donaghy, it completely changed everything and was a real threat to the NBA itself as a business. According to reports, Tim, at that point right before the scandal broke, was a full-blown gambling addict that had gotten behind so bad on debts that he resorted to providing information to the mob about what team would most likely win the game because of inside information to ensure victories. If ever the team the mob bet on won, Donaghy would receive up to $5,000. Now you may say, well, referees don't control players hitting shots or one team simply being more talented, but Donaghy was the perfect example of how that's far from true. Allegedly, what he'd do is place teams in positions defensively where they'd become more or less aggressive during the game, making calls he'd make easier for him to predict and more believable. Things like an early defensive 3-second call, things like phantom calls on the team's star player that gets him off the floor and puts less attention on his orchestrated officiating. It's said, as a gambler, Donaghy had a 70% success rate predicting the outcome of games, which is extraordinarily high and one of the reasons he was eventually caught. The other way was the feds listening on wiretaps in organized crime cases and hearing them talk specifically about receiving information from Tim Donaghy. He'd be called in by the FBI and admit to what he was doing in return for the lighter charges of conspiracy and wire fraud. What he would divulge about the NBA, though, was a lot more sinister. Stunt number 2, the NBA finding him not guilty. The FBI's investigation into Donaghy found that he was not guilty of fixing the actual games, just providing insider information about the games that could affect betting. Tim himself accused the NBA, though, of doing more than fixing games, but dictating what they wanted to happen in the games to allow certain teams to win or lose and extend playoff series, earning everyone involved more money. At the end of the day, it's entertainment, and the NBA is a business. They're in business to make money. More games means more money and the growth of the sport. But the scandal only led to more distrust of the NBA brand and put them in a position where they had to do something or there was no way to keep the brand's integrity. So what did they do? They began their own investigation into Tim Donaghy and concluded that he acted alone as a rogue criminal, as David Stern once put it. Of course, the NBA launching an investigation into the NBA wasn't expected to yield damning issues about itself and was enough of an answer to keep sports fans returning to a sport they loved and were too far invested in to keep coming back. So books about the situation were squashed and never released. Donaghy was seen as nothing but a liar and now whistleblower attempting to pass blame, and the NBA essentially swept that part of its history under the rug over time. But there'll always be a cloud of distrust over the league and its integrity when it comes to fair play. Unfortunately, in this situation, the scandal and broken trust was never enough to do real harm to the business, and few even talk about what happened today.
The league would really dictate what they want to call. They were extending a playoff series because the amount of revenue an additional game would be.
Stunt number 3, the idea that Tim Donaghy acted alone.
The potential mandate would have been from someone somewhere was to not let the defender disrupt the potential 40 or 50 points that the offense, it sells tickets. I get it.
I think we have here a rogue, isolated criminal. A rogue, isolated criminal.
I was like an extra in a movie. Like, it paid me really well, but I was just there. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they did whatever they wanted to do with my character.
Now let's break down what the late David Stern said about who we should think Tim Donaghy was in relation to their league. A rogue criminal. But there's no way Tim Donaghy could have achieved what he did on such a consistent basis all by himself with the profit he was getting and not sharing with other officials, or even the other officials being approached by the mob just as they did with Tim. If you're in line for free lunch and still hungry after eating, what do? Change your shirt or pants and get back in line for more food. One of the biggest examples of Tim alleging the NBA itself fixed the outcome of games for more revenue was the 2002 Western Conference Finals, with Sacramento on their way to defeating the Lakers up 3-2 with the games 6 and 7 on their home floor. The NBA allegedly wanting a Game 7 and potential series win to extend the larger market Lakers games dictated that the refs call the game in favor of LA. Everyone could see that game wasn't right, and Sacramento, along with stars like Chris Webber and Mike Bibby, were robbed of a chance at the NBA Finals and a championship because of it. Webber never won, and Sacramento still hasn't recovered. For the Lakers, though, it capped off their third straight championship as they rode, assisted it seems, into becoming a sports dynasty. This was just one instance. Tim claimed referees knew the NBA wanted the bigger markets to flourish in order to sell superstars and more tickets, so they kept that in mind during games, and it led to unbalanced outcomes. Of course, this couldn't be proven and was brushed off as one rogue criminal and former disgraced ref that wanted to get back at the league. The NBA would later implement things like the 2-minute drill, assessing the final 2 minutes of games, and admit to bad calls and allow teams after the games to voice their disapproval of certain calls, giving them a simple apology for the mistake. They also began using things like challenges during the games to give more control to teams and show that fairness was now emphasized. But is that enough? All in all, the Tim Donaghy scandal never really resulted in much that the general public can dispute about fairness in the NBA, and we'll never know just how big fixing games got. One man went down for it, which killed his voice and credibility, and the league still has what our eyes tells us, a problem with fairly officiated games. The trust never healed. Instead, it was simply addressed, and everyone moved on with their entertainment. Was Tim Donaghy acting alone, or is the trust in sports forever tainted? I don't think we'll ever truly know. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth, and I'm out.
There were subtle videos that would be sent around to them before the game of me just fouling Kobe over and over again, right? Like calls going against me.
Are you still watching basketball?
I haven't watched a game in 2 years.
Think you ever will again?
I'm not sure.
Do you think you and basketball have left each other forever?
I don't know. I guess time will tell.